Once upon a time, in the grand kingdom of Ologun, there lived three princesses: Princess Adaeze, Princess Temilola, and Princess Ifunanya. Each was blessed with extraordinary gifts. Princess Adaeze was a talented healer whose remedies could cure even the gravest of illnesses. Princess Temilola had a voice so enchanting it could calm storms and bring peace to troubled hearts. Princess Ifunanya was a brilliant inventor. She was able to craft tools and machines that could solve almost any problem. Yet, despite their unique talents, the princesses were foolish and vain. They spent their days lounging in luxury, hosting grand parties, and ignoring the needs of their people. Whenever their father, King Olumide, or the palace advisors asked them to use their talents for the kingdom, they scoffed and refused. Why should we work when life is meant to be enjoyed? Adaeze would say, the people can take care of themselves. Temilola often added, someone else can solve their problems. Princess Ifunanya concluded. On a warm afternoon in the palace, King Olumide had gathered his advisors in the grand hall. A dreadful illness had spread through the nearby village, and the people were desperate for help. The royal healer, a wise and experienced woman named Amaka, approached the princesses, who were lounging on their golden chairs, playing with their jewels. Your Majesty, Nneka said, bowing respectfully, the villagers are in dire need of your healing skills. The disease is spreading rapidly, and only your gifts can stop it. Princess Adaeze, who had been lazily flipping through a book of poetry, barely looked up. Oh, I am too tired to help them today. Let someone else do it. I don't want to get my hands dirty, she replied, waving a hand dismissively. Surely, they can wait. I have a performance later that I cannot miss, Temilola added, her voice tinged with irritation as she fiddled with the strings of her harp. I cannot waste my voice on the sick. Princess Ifunanya, who was idly sketching designs for a new dress, sighed dramatically. I am too busy working on new inventions. Helping commoners with their problems doesn't sound like my kind of work. King Olumide, who had hoped his daughters would rise to the occasion, shook his head in disappointment. But the princesses were uninterested, and the matter was forgotten as quickly as it was raised. Another morning, the royal architect, Master Okoye, came to the palace with a request. The kingdom's grain storage facility had collapsed, and the harvest was at risk of being ruined by the coming rainstorms. The princesses were once again gathered in the royal garden, sipping tea and admiring their reflections in the fountain. Your Highnesses, Master Okoye called out respectfully, bowing to them, we need your assistance. Princess Ifunanya, with your great skill in invention, you could help design a device to speed up the rebuilding process. Princess Adeze, your healing touch could help the workers recover from their exhaustion. And Princess Temilola, your songs could lift their spirits during these difficult times. Princess Adeze sighed heavily and leaned back in her chair. I am much too busy attending to my own affairs. Why should I work when others are around to do it? Princess Temilola, her lips curled in disdain, huffed. Songs won't fix a collapsed building. I have better things to do than to sing to workers who have no appreciation for my talents. Princess Ifunanya glanced at the plans in Master Okoye's hands, but quickly turned her gaze elsewhere. I don't have the time. I am focused on something more important than construction work. Besides, I don't see why I should bother. Master Okoye, disheartened, bowed once more and left the garden, knowing the princesses would not be of any help. The workers struggled on without their aid, and the kingdom's future harvest remained uncertain. As the kingdom of Ologun entered a harsh drought season, food stores were dwindling and the people were beginning to suffer. King Olumide called upon his daughters to help alleviate the crisis, hoping their talents could provide some aid. The princesses, however, were far more interested in their personal comfort than in helping their kingdom. A group of palace aides entered the royal chambers, holding baskets filled with withered crops and empty sacks. Your Majesties, one of the aides said, the farmers are desperate. They need help to grow crops that can withstand the drought. Princess Ifunanya, your inventions could create irrigation systems. Princess Adeze, your healing skills can help revive the soil. Princess Temilola, your influence could raise funds for the farmers. The princesses sat at a grand banquet table, feasting on fruits and delicacies, unconcerned by the plight of the kingdom. I am too busy enjoying this feast, Princess Adeze said, plucking a grape from the bowl. Let the farmers figure it out themselves. Princess Temilola lazily reclined in her chair. Why should I worry about these crops? I am not a farmer. I have a concert next week and I won't waste my time on them. Princess Ifunanya flicked a piece of parchment with her finger, uninterested. I have no interest in working on irrigation systems. Besides, I'm sure someone else will solve the problem. It's not my responsibility. Once more, the aides left the chamber defeated, and the kingdom's people suffered as the drought worsened. The princesses continued their indulgent ways, oblivious of the consequences of their refusal to help. One evening, after attending a grand banquet in a neighboring village, a sudden storm rolled in. The rain poured heavily, and the howling winds made it nearly impossible to see. In the chaos, the princess's carriage was separated from the royal entourage, and their horses bolted in fear. Lost and alone in the dark forest, the princesses were terrified. Their fine gowns were soaked, and their jewels weighed them down as they stumbled through the mud. After hours of wandering, they came upon a small, unfamiliar village. Hungry, cold, and desperate, they knocked on the door of the first house they saw. The man who answered looked them up and down with suspicion. "We are lost and need shelter," Princess Adaeze pleaded. But the man shook his head. "I have no room to spare," he said, though his house was clearly large enough. At another house, the princesses asked for food. Princess Temilola's voice trembled as she said, "We have been walking for hours and have nothing to eat." The woman at the door shrugged. "I have plenty, but it's not my problem," she said, slamming the door. At the third house, they asked for help, finding their way back to the kingdom. Princess Ifunanya tried to explain their plight, but the old man there only laughed. "You are not my responsibility," he said. Everywhere they went, they encountered the same selfishness and indifference they had shown to others in the palace. At last, they came to a modest cottage at the edge of the village. An elderly couple and their 2 young grandchildren welcomed them in without hesitation. "You poor dears," the grandmother said. "Come inside and warm yourselves by the fire." The family shared their meager meal with the princesses and gave them dry clothes. Over the next few weeks, the princesses stayed in the kind family's house. But the family made it clear that they had to contribute to their upkeep. Princess Adaeze began tending to the sick villagers with her healing skills. Princess Temilola sang songs that brought joy and comfort. And Princess Ifunanya repaired tools and created helpful gadgets for the farmers. As they walked alongside the villagers, the princesses began to change. They saw the struggles of the people and felt the joy of using their gifts to help others. For the first time, they understood the value of selflessness. After a month, the village head hunter came to the cottage. "I have found the way back to your kingdom," he said. The princesses were overjoyed, but also sad to leave the family and the villagers who had taught them so much. Before they left, the elderly woman hugged them and said, "Never forget the lessons you have learned here. Use your gifts wisely." The head hunter led the princesses through the forest, and before long, they reached the gates of Ologun Kingdom. The princesses returned to the kingdom. The king was happy to finally have his children back after many failed attempts to find them. The princesses had returned as changed women. They apologized to their father and their people for their past behavior and vowed to use their talents for the good of the kingdom. One chilly morning, a young girl from the village came to the palace. Her face was pale and covered in sweat. "Please, help my mother," she begged. Her voice was shaky with fear. She has been bedridden for days and no one knows how to cure her. Adeze, now accustomed to the humble life in the village, had been tending to the sick with the family for weeks. She immediately stood up from the small table where she was making tea and walked over to the girl. "Lead the way," she said softly, her voice no longer the dismissive tone it had once been. The girl guided Princess Adeze to a small hut on the edge of the village. Inside, a frail woman lay on a cot, her eyes closed and breathing shallow. After several hours, Princess Adeze brewed a potent concoction of herbs and roots. She placed a bowl of it by the woman's side and instructed her family to help her sip it slowly. "Rest and drink this," Princess Adeze said, her voice steady and confident. By the next morning, the woman's fever was broken. Her strength was returning, and the family could hardly believe their eyes. The once indifferent princess had given them hope. The family expressed their deepest gratitude, and Princess Adeze, filled with pride, realized that this was the true joy of using her talents. Days passed, and the princesses began to understand the value of their gifts. One evening, the family was gathered around the fire, eating a modest supper. As they ate, the sounds of laughter and voices from the nearby village echoed through the air. But there was a noticeable tension in the atmosphere. The village was anxious, as many were still struggling with the hardships of the past weeks. Princess Temilola, noticing the heavy mood, stood up and cleared her throat. "I will sing a song," she said, her voice soft at first. She had learned that music, much like words, could heal hearts and lift spirits. The family looked up, their faces filled with hope. Princess Temilola began to sing, her voice clear and soothing, like a gentle breeze. She sang of hope, renewal, and the beauty of the land, drawing on the deep connection she now felt with the village. Her melody filled the air, and the villagers who had gathered outside the palace paused to listen. The sad, tired faces of the villagers began to lift as they felt the soothing power of her voice. The song continued for hours, a balm to their weary souls. It wasn't just the melody that touched them, but the sincerity in her voice. The sincerity she had once thought was beneath her. As the last notes faded into the night, the villagers felt lighter, and their burdens seemed a little easier to bear. Princess Temilola was happier, knowing that she was using her gift for the good of her people, not just for shows or her self-gain. One afternoon, some families visibly were still struggling with a difficult problem. The fields had been hit by a series of storms, and much of the irrigation system had been damaged. The crops were in danger of being ruined if water couldn't reach them, and there was little hope of fixing it in time before the next dry spell. Princess Ifunanya, who had once found no value in using her inventive mind for anything other than her own amusement, watched the problem unfold with growing concern. She had come to care deeply for her people, and she could no longer sit idly by. "Let me try something," she said, her voice determined. She gathered some old pipes, wooden boards, and other scraps from both the palace and the village, and she began to walk. Everyone watched curiously as she created a small water wheel powered by the nearby stream that would push the water into the fields, even if the main irrigation system was down. For days, Princess Ifunanya worked tirelessly, making adjustments to the design and testing it with the help of some of the farmers. It was exhausting, but she was driven by a sense of purpose she had never known before. The village watched as she labored, and even those who had doubted her were impressed by her perseverance. When the device was finally completed, Princess Ifunanya stood back, wiping the sweat from her brow. The water wheel began to turn, sending water through the channels and into the parched fields. It worked! The village erupted into joyful cheers. The water was flowing and the crops were saved. "This is a gift, Ifunanya," the king said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have brought us hope." And for the first time, Princess Ifunanya understood the immense power in her talent, not for herself, but for the good of others. She smiled, knowing that she had done something meaningful, something that would change her kingdom for the better. The people of Ologun were amazed and overjoyed at the transformation of their princesses. The kingdom prospered, and the story of the lost village became a legend. Some say the village was a gift from the gods, sent to teach the princesses a valuable lesson. To this day, no one has ever found the village again, but its memory lives on in the hearts of the 3 wise and kind princesses of Ologun Kingdom. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.